or he's gonna.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I forget every time.
That's all right.
Go for it.
So I would like you guys to share some of your concerns that you guys have had in your transactions that you feel like, why did the lender, things about the lender that you didn't like, or things that we can just have an open discussion about that we can try and get to the bottom of why some of these things might be coming up.
I would love to do that, but I'd love to start with the first
Yes.
settable, which is, what does a perfect relationship look like? Because
Okay.
some of our concerns with some lenders, and not necessarily you, but I would like to discuss that. And what I'm hoping is you can give us the perspective, right? Well, the reason that happens is this, but we can also give you the perspective and we can come to an agreement. For instance, that doesn't sound right. The whole gamut with lenders of, I'm not telling you anything, and I don't work for you, and you don't get to know anything, to, you just told me a whole bunch of stuff you should not have told me, and la.
Yeah.
Like the whole gamut. And where is the appropriate level of communication and sharing? And, my favorite lender used to say, Lisa, would you please call your client and tell them I need this letter? Right? Where you get lenders that, well, I'm still waiting on a couple things. Well, what are they? Well, just a couple. It's my client. Tell me what it is so I can tell him.
Yep.
Get her the letter. And we understand there's a confidential aspect to this, but where should that relationship be? What level of sharing should we expect? And what's your philosophy on that?
So I actually will ask the client up front if you care if I discuss this with your agent at times, because again, that partnership, if we're good at what we do together, it's a better client experience all the way around. And you get to the point where you expect this from each other. I have a lot of partnerships where it's not even in question. Where I will call Lisa and say, hey, they're not getting back to me. Can you nudge them? There's times where, some people, especially with age, may have struggles with getting you the documentation you need, And so I'll literally ask, would you be willing to share your username and password with me? Some people are like, yes, thank God, please do it for me. I don't want to do it. But again, I think the transparency has to be there. Sticking our heads in the sand does not do anything for anybody. And, again, asking the borrower if it's okay to speak with their agent is very important to me. And I think to the transaction, because you can help them understand why I'm asking sometimes, even though some lenders they get to the point where they're just not very thorough. They get so used to the day-to-day that it's like a foreign language coming off to the borrower, especially a first-time buyer, someone that's elderly, hasn't bought a home in forever. It's important to remember every deal is like the first one you've ever done, that like your own home. I try to remember, like, it's very stressful, it's emotional, it's all the above. So I remember that in every deal that you got to treat it as such, because people that you may not think it's a big deal, it's a big deal to them. So I think it goes back to questioning your partnerships and how well it is together. If it's meshing well, if there's problem areas, asking these questions with your lender. If you like the person, let's help each other to get better at what we do together. And that's I think that then it's a better client experience, and you don't have to worry about your transaction.
Right. So it is not out of the ordinary for an agent to expect that you're going to be open to asking the buyer if they're willing to have you communicate with us, and to then, with that permission, share with us what you need, share with us how we can help, share with us what you're waiting for, etc.
Well, I think a lot of it's mirroring our client, what their needs are. Some want hands off and don't want to know anything until you're done. And some want to know basically from start to finish what is every bit of the process. And that's partly why I think, one thing I've done differently was video, audio with the phone call, and do emails and readable type updates, because everybody likes it a different way. And that covers the basis.
So if we're going to talk about that and how could we be good partners, I'm going to go on record as the broker here to say that I would expect you to kind of set that straight if the expectation is too much.
Correct.
For me, I'm okay with only hearing when you need me if I trust you
That's
that
the
I'm
big
gonna hear
word.
from you
Yeah,
when you need me, right? That's fine with me.
correct.
If you've earned my trust,
Yep.
that I understand that. But I would expect that a lender would also say to a realtor, listen, you've got to trust me that I'm going to call you if I need you.
Correct.
And that I will update you once. If I had an agent that was hounding you in an unreasonable way, I would be okay with you setting a different expectation.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, and the key for me, and that's one of the changes I made, is every Thursday, I'm gonna call my files. I don't care if it takes me 2 hours to get through my pipeline. It is that important, because then you, like you said, you set the expectation and you
It actually
you
saves
call
you
as
time.
needed. At that point, if you have a fire, you call.
Yeah.
But that trust is there then.
Mhm.
And look at the efficiency it gave you to move on through your next deal, to find the next deal, to find the next listing. All these efficiencies that if you're not shackled to your desk, then I gotta call Bryon to figure out what's going on with this file. I haven't heard from him in 2 weeks.
Mhm.
Those are all uneasy feelings. So that, again, it goes back to that big trust factor is huge,
Plus, it saves you time, Brian. That 2 hours spent on Thursday
Exactly
means
right.
you're not taking calls all week long
Correct.
randomly as people are like, what's going on? Because they know you're gonna call them on Thursday.
And that's one thing I learned in the last 2.5 years is that wasn't necessarily happening because everybody was just fighting to get through the day, right?
Mhm.
The volume was great, but now it's like, all right, now what do? I've got to be better at what I do. I like to interview my agents, referral partners that have a good partnership with at the end of the year, like, hey, not to find pain points, but hey, is there anything that you saw that I could do differently? And I think that needs to be with any partnership, for you and I both, right?
Mhm.
Because everything goes much smoother. Moving on to the next part.
Just
of
really
this.
quickly,
Yes.
does anybody here have a pain point when it comes to relationship and communication with lenders? Anything that you're struggling with that you'd like a perspective on, or that to know, am I crazy to think that this doesn't work? Or
What's the typical turnaround time for you for pre-approvals?
So a lot of it, I will say this with a grain of salt, because it depends on each situation, whether or not what their employment looks like, how they're paid, if they're willing to give me documents up front. The importance of getting documents up front is more crucial than it's ever been. So if they're willing to do that, it makes for a lot smoother pre-approval. But even without it, let's just say it's a straight hourly pay worker or salary, and I can have a deep application with them over the phone, 24 hours or less. I mean, if you call me and you say they need to make an offer, yours goes to the top of the stack. Because I understand the importance of the way our market is. I mean, I think it's calming down a little bit, but not enough to where you got to be ready to go. And unfortunately, borrowers are not ready to go. They see the house they want to make an offer on it now, right? So we kind of have to tailor to those needs, knowing that if they're not willing to give the documentation, that's a big point of the pre-approval letters.
that's not just that, that's a red flag for us.
Yeah.
Right, so I want to know that
Yeah.
as your partner.
Yeah.
My client's refusing to give you, because, we look for 3 things, are they qualified?
Yep.
Are they motivated? And are they loyal, right?
Yep.
Well, that speaks to motivation,
Correct.
right? And I'm gonna jump over hills and mountains to get you this house, and you're not gonna provide documents?
Correct.
So do you tell an agent, like, I couldn't do a full approval because I wasn't able to get these documents?
Oh, absolutely. And
Okay.
here's the other thing I also look at. The pre-approval is not just, like you just said, it's not just to show credit worthiness or the ability, but some people think they can afford a $200,000 house at $900 a month.
Mhm.
So it's good to be able to have that conversation with them of the correct expectations of where they can shop,
Mhm.
what their true budget is,
Mhm.
because even though we can get them pre-approved for X, they may only be comfortable with here.
Right.
And it's a family decision, right? It's not something you just, go out and do at 55% of your debt to income ratio on a gross income.
Mhm.
And so it's important to have those conversations and bring it up to the referral partners, because again, without those conversations, they don't really know it's up to us to advise them. They're coming to this blind, they're intimidated, they're nervous.
Mhm.
So I think setting that importance of getting documentation that day, if they can,
Mhm.
to make it a strong pre-approval.
Mhm.
So if we're talking to a person who is just starting the process, we're kind of getting to know each other as well, and they haven't been pre-approved, and I send them my referral partners and recommendations, should we go ahead and just tell them, you're going to want these items ready because they're gonna ask you for them, what are those items that we should tell them, you know?
We used to have that list, but it's been so long, I'm sure
Yeah.
the list is
Right.
ridiculous at this point.
Yeah.
But
So I
yes.
can
for like
give you
the
the
top-
basic bullet points.
Yes.
And you could have something like that to
Or,
give to
you
your
know,
clients.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because again, that's that partnership mindset of like, hey, how can we help each other to
Right.
make this go smoother? That way,
Yeah.
when I pass this off to Brian, they're not shocked when Brian goes, hey, I need this, this, and this, and this, and this.
That used to be 12
Because
months
it becomes overwhelming. It
Uh-huh.
does. A lot of people are like, I don't know where it's at. I don't
Yeah.
have this stuff.
Yeah, so if you had something, I know like with the inspection one, you know, he was able to provide something and you.
Do you have
pushed
a
out to
list
us
you
if
give
you had a
people?
Yeah,
What
list.
to have
yeah,
prepared?
absolutely.
That'd be
Yeah,
awesome.
and
Thank you.
then she could share it with us, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
we
And some
could
of
just
it's,
send it around.
and keep in mind, some of it's probably over documenting, but to keep in
Yes.
mind, this
That's
stuff
a
only
shame.
gets to an underwriter what's necessary.
Yeah.
But if you need it, it's in file, you're not chasing it.
Not
Right.
Too much of it.
Because each approval is different. You may only need one pay stub versus 30 days. You may only need one W-2 versus two W-2s.
Mhm.
But again, it's important to have just the basics in the file.
So Brian, advice as you form a team, that is a concern to us
Mhm.
because nothing drives us more crazy than your assistant asking us for something we already gave you. Right?
Correct.
And that happens a lot.
Yeah.
Right? We need this. I sent that. Well, we
Mhm.
need it again. Right? So that's something that if you want to be a good referral partner to us, it's very good systems of
Don't ask.
if we get something, we put it in this spot and you look in this spot before you ask the agent for it
Correct.
because making us do that work over and over again.
So here's one of our efficiencies. So my assistant isn't going to be someone that's necessarily on the front line, but they're going to help me field applications, set them up in our system. And what we have now is an efficiency. It's called, you heard of OneNote?
Yeah,
This is like OneNote on steroids. And so the good thing for me is we have a share drive that anything I have goes in the share drive and is accessible to anybody on my team
Mhm,
that can access before they ask for anything.
mhm.
Because I would agree with you, the importance of the efficiency for you guys and us
Right.
is to not ask for the same documents.
Mhm.
I mean, because that's frustrating. You
And
know,
that
when
happens
they're-
a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And that goes back to effectively communicating with your team and having a process down, you know, to the T
Mhm.
and not having those errors happen.
Okay.
Now, everybody's human, does it happen? Sure. But the idea is to basically fine tune this to where it doesn't happen. That's the efficiency that really creates bottlenecks in the process.
Mhm.
And if you're doing that on every file and we're closing 20 files a month, you've lost a lot of time.
Yeah.
A lot of time.
Yeah. For
And so
sure.
in this market, I mean, those full underwriting pre-approvals, if we can coach our clients up front, I know you want to buy a house right now, but if you do this heavy lift up front and we get this fully underwritten, now all you're waiting on is the title work and appraisal.
Mhm.
Now your closings go, I mean, everything goes so much smoother.
Mhm.
So if we can spend the week up front, 2 days, 4 days up front and get that fully underwritten approval,
Mhm.
now when you guys make an offer, you can say, hey, this has been through an underwriter. I can even call the list agent and solidify,
Mhm.
this only needs title work and appraisal.
Right.
That becomes a much more appealing deal.
Right.
And so if we can get better about that, like it's, me too, is just saying, hey, I know that you want to do this now, but if we can do this up front, get that heavy lift up front, it's just such a smooth process. I mean, the client experience is way better.
And I would add on to that too, that it would be helpful on our end, not just with Amerifirst, but
Mhm.
oftentimes with lenders, we'll introduce them to a lender and then my client will hear from 4 different people from their team.
Yeah.
And they're like, I don't know who I'm supposed to talk to. I don't know. Some random person called me and you told me not to answer, you know, because it could be fraud, whatever.
Yeah.
So I think for us knowing up front, here's all the people that you could hear from on our team, and here's all the people that your buyer is going to, in some way, communicate with, just so they're
That's
not
great.
like, who are these people? Like,
Yeah.
Sure.
not as much with your team, because it's a few of you and you guys. do
Well, they're giving
a
up
great
sensitive
job.
information.
Yeah, they're giving out sensitive information, but like recently I have some older clients.
Sure.
And they're like, somebody named Alyssa or Melissa or Jared, you know, like they don't,
Mhm.
they're scared.
Mhm.
And so I feel
Absolutely.
like introducing everybody up front and saying, you know, like, especially on our end, if we're supposed to submit documents or anything, if it's supposed to go to all of you, it's easier just to know up front. That way everybody is on the same page.
No, it's a great point. I think that goes back to like my thoughts of a partnership because they know you like family, your team. They know the names. They know, and it's important to me to tell them up front, hey, you're going to be hearing from so-and-so, you know, just like you said up front. So they're not alarmed when they see this different name asking for very specific information, you know, sensitive information. And so I would agree with you that partnership, that's a conversation you should have with any of your partners so that they know going in, it's already overwhelming. And so to get 3-4 people reaching out asking for different things is you know, it's alarming sometimes, especially for older people.
Well, and you guys do like those great videos of kind of the progress updates.
Yep.
It would be cool too if there was a video introducing everybody up front, so like going back to these older clients, they could see people's faces and feel more comfortable, because so much goes over, you know, email and internet and everything. They want that.
Well, that's a
personal experience.
reusable video. Hi, it's Bryon. Just want to introduce you to my team, and then
So you know.
and
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So actually, that's part of my plan is to redo that, because I haven't, you've probably seen my application
Yeah,
one where.
yeah.
So I'm gonna redo that and do exactly that, because I started 14 months ago, probably ish, on video, and I was so nervous. I'm like, do I look like that, sound like that every day? But I stepped out of my comfort zone, and after I did it, it started to become more natural. And like you said, do it once. If you do it well, I mean, it might take me 15 takes. But once I did it, it's now a part of the process, a phase, and they see your face, because everything's still pretty remote. I know you guys aren't so much, but people are still very much, that's where our millennials and Gen Xers are headed. That's how we get the Quickens. That's how we get the national lenders, because it's Google, you know.
But I've
So
worked with Lisa from your team for years and years. If I saw her in a crowd, I wouldn't know it's her.
and that's
So I
important.
would love to know who these people are too, you know?
I would agree with you. That's building that
We work
family
better
and
that
that
way.
trust. And I think that's important for you guys to know who you're working with from all angles, even underwriters to a degree. So I would agree with that. That's very important to build that.
I currently have a buyer that every house we look at, he wants to contact his lender to see what his payment will be.
I get that every day, all day. And so I think
How do I try to avoid that for you? Or
It's a
do I
tough
not
one.
try to avoid that for you?
so I look at it 2 different ways. It's tough because I have a mortgage toolkit that I send out to all my clients that has a mortgage calculator. But
yeah,
leaving that in their hands though, also, here's the big one for me. Yes, they can estimate a payment, get a ballpark, because if you give them an estimate of interest rate, they can ballpark. Taxable values are much lower almost on every transaction than they've ever been, because the sale prices and the values have increased so much. You know, we're looking at what, still 18 to 20% a year, maybe a little bit lower than that now, but that's astronomical growth, to where if we don't, as lenders, advise them on what their payment is actually going to be,
when the taxes.
they're gonna call us
Yes,
screaming a year from now, 8 months from now, and be upset and potentially put them in a foreclosure situation with a family. That's where it's hard for me. I feel like that's where I want them to reach out for that reason.
I will tell you, Chicago Titles app uses the millage rate and half the purchase price. Like, it calculates as if, I wonder if yours could do that.
And that's, so ours does not. That's the
Yeah.
hard part, is that
You take the actual taxes now and
I go
split
and
that.
tax the millage, and
Yes.
I calculate the millage
Yeah.
and based on sale price.
Yeah,
It's a worst case scenario, but again,
yeah.
um,
No,
I'll
but
throw
your
Morgan out there.
automatic calculation doesn't do that. If
So-
you give them that tool, it doesn't.
no, because you have to actually
Calculate the
deduct the
change,
mills out, like, so if the city of Battle Creek, you have to deduct the 9
Yeah.
mills for each one.
Yeah.
So that part's a little complicated, and so Morgan and I had a transaction that, I mean, in a sense, saved this guy's a scary situation. Did it stink at front? Yes, but he appreciated it more and looked at both of us more of like, hey, we did the right thing. We're being an advisor, and found him a house that worked. But that one, a year later, would have put him in a spot where it would have made him so uncomfortable that he may have had to sell it or lose it. And so the calculating part that's a sensitive one. I wish there was a way to automate, type in sale price, and it automatically at least calculates the millage, and I can probably bring that up. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna make it do that. Because that's probably the part, thank you. That's the part that's hard right now, is because the values have came up so far. It's important for them to know what that payment's actually going to be.
and I won't name names, he's getting frustrated with his lender because it takes 2 to 3 days for the lender to respond what the payment's gonna be.
So I do have clients like that too, and what I try and do at that point is tell them a breakdown of every X amount of dollars, 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 difference of payments.
Good.
Here's an estimate per 10,000, so that they,
Up front, so they know that upfront.
yes.
Okay.
And again, that's something you may ask of your lender to do.
Okay.
Just say, hey, I know you don't want to be bothered 5 times a day or 5 times a week with doing different payments, because if we can give them a range, at least gives them that, hey, this is comfortable or it's not comfortable.
Right, okay.
So we
I
give
just
them
want
that.
to see how you felt about that, because I'm like,
It's a big one. It's a big one.
it's annoying, but on the other hand, it helps them in a long run and doesn't, it
Yeah, they're
builds that
making a better
relationship.
decision, for
Right,
sure.
right,
Yeah.
and it builds that relationship with them between you and me, that we're helping them, but on the other hand, it is very time consuming.
It is, because if you think about, lenders typically will have, obviously, depending on who you're working with, will have anywhere from 10 plus deals that they're working. And if all 10 clients are doing that, you can see what that does to the efficiency of your
Right.
pipeline.
So there's that fine line of what's too much and what's not.
Correct. And I think it's just being that good advisor up front on letting them know the ranges. And if,
Upfront.
yeah, I mean, just at the very initial conversation, I asked, what is your comfort range? I mean, that to me is very important. They might qualify for 200 grand, but if their budget's for 100 grand, they need to know.
Mhm.
So,
Okay, so being 10:30 and wanting to get through this, some of these we've already covered just by our talking, but what's the best way to introduce the client to you? And I'm gonna give an example. When you were at KCCU, there was one time, and maybe it wasn't even you, but someone said, just have them go on the website. And I don't know that I thought that was the smartest thing to do, because first of all, if they don't put your name in, they don't get you.
correct.
Right? And second of all, it doesn't start right off with that relationship, which is, again, so
Exactly right.
important. So what's your opinion of what's the best way to introduce you to our client to get things started?
So I think this goes depending on your partnership and what the agent likes and what they like to be able to give to their client. But the way I prefer it is a phone call up front.
Mhm.
And I
From
give them the-
us?
No, so either from you, or
Okay.
you say, hey, can you call my client?
Okay.
Okay. And if you tell them I'm gonna call as soon as I possibly can.
Mhm.
And then that's when I talk to them in regards to what their best needs are. Like, would you like to do it over the phone? Would you like to do it online?
Mhm.
And if they want the efficiency of doing it online, then at that point I will do that. But
A lot of people don't.
our links now,
Mhm.
my link is very specific to me. There's absolutely no way it can go to anybody but me.
Okay,
And it notifies me
okay.
and my setup specialist, which is gonna basically get it in the system, build the loan and say, hey, Brian, this is ready to be looked at.
And then do you let the agent know, hey, your client so-and-so called me? We're
Absolutely,
good.
every
Thank you.
time. I think it's very important because you guys,
It is
again,
important.
are very busy and it's hard to keep track of, especially when you're trying to get to your day of who's called, where is this at?
Mhm.
Do I have to follow up with Brian on these leads or do I not?
Mhm.
And that's that trust factor.
Do you want us to give you a heads up? Hey, we referred this person to you. Here's their name and number.
I love that, yes.
Okay. I didn't know
Yes,
if that
because it
was
allows me to
over
better
redundant for
track.
you. Okay.
No, I absolutely love that. And it allows me to build you up when I call them. A good partnership is building each other up and making each other look good to a
Mhm.
degree. So I can say, hey, you picked the right agent. She's gonna be a great fit for you.
Mhm.
And it solidifies your partnership, I think.
Well, not only that, but we've had situations before where the client didn't say, Lisa said call.
Yeah.
And the next thing we know, that lender's trying to refer that person to a different
Another-
agent, because
Correct.
they don't know that we sent them in the first place. So it is very important to say, make sure you tell
Every initial
Brian, I give you his
conversation, yeah.
name, and yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Each
You
and-
want to make sure
Each
that.
conversation I have, I ask, were you referred to me
Mhm.
by somebody? So I want to make sure I tell thank you to my
Mhm.
referral partner and know who needs to go to.
Yeah.
Because you're absolutely right.
That has happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What do you find is most often missing from the buyer? What is the hard thing to get, or what is that thing?
That
that
thing, I guess I would
pitch.
struggle with the most is probably,
Income verification.
I was just gonna say that, yes.
I knew it.
I can't deny that. Or asset verification. They're both, almost assets is almost tougher than the income to some degree. It's very important for your lender upfront to ask specific questions, because here's what's happening in our industry. Buyers have the ability to go online, apply, say, I make this and I have this much in my account.
Mhm,
And I'll say the word quicken.
mhm.
They give you an automated pre-approval letter based on the criteria you gave in the system.
If everything you said is true.
Our system gives us that ability, and we said, absolutely not. That's not a pre-approval.
Mhm,
I mean, it's no better than the paper it's on.
mm-mm.
Because, and buyers don't do this to be facetious or unethical.
No, they're excited. They got a pre-approval.
Well, they're excited and maybe they think they do make this much money, but when you're looking at year-to-date earnings, and you're looking at all these factors, it's very important to have that documentation for those reasons, and or me to have those conversations up front, to ask them very detailed questions.
Is
Or
there,
they're,
go ahead.
or they're a server and they
Correct.
make this much money, but their W-2.
Perfect
shows
example.
different.
Or the
Perfect.
money's in a safe in their bedroom.
Correct.
It's not seasoned.
Yeah.
Is there
Happened today.
anything in the application that says that right up front? Like, how much cash do you have? Is that cash in a bank? I mean, is there a way to talk about that right up front? Where is that money? Because it can't be in your mattress.
There is, so when we I sent out our initial emails asking for the X, we do,
Okay.
but I think it's a per lender thing.
Mhm.
And I don't think it's a well-practiced thing. I think that when I have a conversation, the initial conversation about their application, I'm specifically asking them, hey, the underwriter will ask or want to see 60 days of bank statements. Have you had any large deposits in the last 60 days that are outside of your payroll? Have you had any bonus income? Have you had any gifts?
Casino winnings.
Mhm.
Correct.
Yeah.
Because a lot of
That's
people
true.
start the mentality of cash is king. I
Mhm,
have this money. Why do you care?
mhm,
There are ways to structure if you know that
mhm,
up front.
mhm.
We all know with conventional lending, you can get creative with gifting and
letters.
clothes.
Right.
We don't need to know anything more than that.
Mhm.
Juan and I have dealt with that together, have done some things, but there's ways, if we know, and we ask the right question up front to make this smooth for everybody.
So what Brian's saying is there's this $10,000 deposit that doesn't have I mean, it has an explanation. It's not drug money, but it is not something that underwrite. Then you can have the parents write a gift letter. Yeah, we gave that to them.
Yep.
You know, or something. Now,
Assets are
Has to
definitely
show
one of the
it, but
trickiest
still,
parts, and
it's
you muddy the
hard.
waters quicker than anything, it's
Yeah.
assets,
assets.
for sure.
So more than income verification.
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. That's good information. I want to skip the tell us why these things happen because it'll take a minute, but what do you wish more agents would do? And we'll just put them both together. What do you wish more agents would stop doing?
Okay, what do they
Where are
do?
we not helping ourselves or you, or where could we help ourselves or you?
So because you guys are spending so much time on every buyer, I mean, it may take 10, 15 houses, you guys are working your butts off. I mean, more than you ever have. And so if I can be that resource or partner for you to call the list agent, you know, some agents like that, some don't, but I don't think it could hurt if you call a listing agent and say, hey, I'm working with this buyer. This is a very strong buyer, and give them some positive feedback right off the bat as you're making the offer. I think that helps. For instance, I had a Mishta loan where the list agent was 30 years in the business and thought Mishta was for bad credit borrowers and was gonna kibosh this deal. She had multiple others. We had a 15-minute conversation. She ended up taking the deal. And it was only because we were able to solidify, hey, this isn't a big deal. There's not a huge time frame added onto it. It's pretty much seamless for you. And just having that conversation gave her that comfort of knowing, hey, this is okay. And actually it's better for my seller because they don't have to ask them for any money. You know, that's where that would, in that specific transaction. But the other thing is, don't be afraid to call your partner, your lender. I think a lot of people are hesitant to call because they feel like they're bothering. A true partnership, it doesn't matter if it's 8, 9 o'clock at night, in my mind. If you're gonna be that partner and that you're in it to win it with that realtor, it's being there throughout the whole transaction. I'm not saying you need to answer your phone at 8 p.m., but I'm just saying, don't hesitate to reach out when you feel the need to, because I think that's important, again, to have that smooth transaction and know where the pain points may be, or, you know, any of that stuff. It's the communication is key. And then what was the other one?
Well, what do you wish we would do more of and what do you wish we would stop doing? How are we not helping you or not helping ourselves?
So I think the stop doing was probably that is, don't think that you're bothering me. We're here for you. And I think that some lenders give off that vibe of, man, you're bothering me, or it takes some hours to call you back.
Well,
That's
they
some-
just start ghosting us.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's why when you said
Actually,
days to get back to you, I'm like, get like.
I think
move
that's
away
where you
from
have to
him.
reevaluate.
I have a
Switch
lender that
them.
would not.
If he doesn't call me back in 2 days, I'm like, he is dead.
Yeah,
He
Right.
is deceased.
I
Yeah.
didn't refer him, he came to me.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah.
That's the
I,
so we had a
Move.
comment from Morgan.
oh, I just wanted to give Bryon a compliment because I actually had lunch with a lender who she asked me to lunch and paid for my lunch. And she said, what are we kind of looking for? And I said, I don't want to call you on the weekends, but if just somebody who communicates and she said, I'm not Bryon Mallernee. When on my weekends are my weekends. And I was like, well,
Oh,
then
that's
that's why Bryon. So I wanted to she actually said your
That's
name
awesome.
Yeah.
That
because
is-
she's heard it more than once, so I thought I wanted to give you
You
that
guys work on the
compliment
weekends.
while it came.
Well, okay, but as a person that coaches my agents, balancing all things and setting limits and all that kind of thing, even me, I know if one of you is calling me at 9 o'clock at night, I know that you wouldn't just call me to be like, do you know what that sign is? You would not call me at 9 unless you
Sure.
needed me. So I guess you saying, call me, I'm thinking, don't say that, but you trust
It's
that
a
we're not
trust and
gonna do
partnership.
that unless we need you.
Correct.
Right.
And I will be honest about this. There's some agents that will call on the weekend that really haven't asked the right questions of what, are they ready to make an offer this weekend?
Mhm.
If they're not, it's my job to ask those questions. Hey, do you need this today? Are you making an offer? Who else doesn't love a deal that's that day?
Yeah, right, right.
And so if you're saying, no, he's ready to make an offer on $200,000 house, am I gonna drop what I'm doing? Yes, that's the partnership. That's the trust.
Mhm.
That's your livelihood. That's my livelihood. And if you can't put that deal together, if all lenders are like, nah, it's a Monday to Friday, 8 to 5,
Mhm.
that's not what realtors do. You guys are working after people's work hours. So it's important to me both of us to ask those questions of importance, because this market is that tough.
Yeah.
And so
Great.
thank you for that, Morgan.
She said it.
Well,
I will say, just that Mishta example that you gave.
yes,
So we're on a deal right now, and that was, the client is using Mishta, and so he had told me like, hey, if you're gonna put an offer on this, go ahead and just let the listing agent know, like if they have any questions about this program or whatever, I'm totally available to answer those questions. And luckily, this agent knew Bryon, and so, but I did put in my offer summary page, like, if there's any questions on this program, lender's more than happy to answer the questions, blah, blah. And it just made him feel even more comfortable that like I was even putting that out there. And so I appreciated having the, I guess, permission, to do that. And found it very helpful in that transaction. So.
I just think I found in today's market that it's solidifying the buyer and the relationship
Mhm.
is it's another nudge that helps. And you'll see on my pre-approval letters, you probably notice I have that back page
Mhm.
that is saying local lender. It points out a lot of highlights as to what you're gonna get from a local lender versus your national lender.
And in that
For sure.
partnership side,
Yeah.
it makes us look better too,
Maybe not.
because we're coming in looking even more prepared. Like,
Right.
I'm gonna communicate with you, like, we're gonna get help on the sites, we're coming in as a team. This is, it just, I think it helped all together, and it actually helped, because I had never worked with this other agent before, and it helped our conversation and communication and his comfortability with me that I was gonna come to the table with everything I needed and was gonna seek help from you if I needed that. It
Yeah.
just helped it all around.
Well, as
So I
far as that
appreciate
trust factor goes, and this doesn't go in this meeting, but I have, part of my business plan is creating more of the pillars of what I do from start to finish. And I'm gonna share that with you guys as partners, because now you know what to expect. You're my accountability partner to some degree. You know what you're gonna expect from me throughout the deal, and it's black and white. Okay, so you're not left wondering how I'm gonna treat the client or where these are gonna take place. I think that, again, goes into having that good, strong partnership of knowing what to expect from your lender.
Right. Well, and going back to communication, this is just a quick point, but on the reverse, we need to trust that when you are speaking to that listing agent, that you also understand, right,
Mhm.
that
Correct.
you know, that you can be trusted to speak to the listing agent and
Right.
not tell
Yes.
them things that
That's
they
right.
shouldn't hear.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
updates with listing agents should not consist of anything specific with the file.
Right,
And to be honest with you, if there's a fire, it goes directly to the buyer's agent. It doesn't go to listing agent, because again, it's up to the buyer's agent to make a decision on how they want to handle a sensitive topic.
well, not only that, but it could be fixed before the listing
Correct.
agent even needs to hear about it,
That's
so please don't
Well,
tell
and
them,
lenders
I
don't
got this fixed.
They don't
Yeah.
always know that you are in the middle of working an addendum because of inspections or something, and all of a sudden you may have jeopardized this
Amen.
negotiation.
That's right.
Amen,
And so, yeah, it's very important that your lenders know when it's appropriate to communicate with a listing agent.
amen, amen. All right, what do we wish more lenders would do? What do, you know? I know I said a minute ago, like, what are our pain points with communication? Then let's go to this list, right? How does it happen that a buyer's pre-approved, but they don't have the funds to close? How does that happen? How
So-
do they not know that they need cash to close, or they way misunderstand their cash to close?
So again, I guess I can only reference some of your national lenders with experience I've seen is that, hey, you're pre-approved, yay, it's all happy and glorious, but they're not giving them a true perspective of what it looks like. I give out a generic cash to close worksheet based upon the sale price they like, so they know upfront. And I think every partner should do that. I mean, if you don't know financially what it's going to take upfront when you're making an offer, or even before your offer, they could say, I don't have that. Well, now you know you need to ask for concessions, or you need to try Mishta, or you need to try different angles.
Do your cash to close estimates include prepaids? Because that seems to be where the huge hiccup happens, is they
Right.
expect their down payment, they expect their closing costs, but the prepaids just
They're not even
seem to
existent
come out
yet.
of the blue. Do yours include prepaids?
They absolutely should, and yes, they do.
Okay.
If it's a generic one, I just basically pull an estimated tax, for the area. If it's Lakeview,
Mhm,
I'll put a generic version of it in there, but I put the correct impounds based on the month that you may close.
mhm.
I just got on the other day, it was Quicken, and I'm sorry, I keep using that name, but that's the one I
No,
see the most.
we agree.
The
Mhm.
prepaid
Yeah.
showed $34 a month and 8 months collected.
Uh-huh.
That was it.
Yeah,
And so you are right. That's thousands of dollars that
Mhm.
buyer didn't expect. at
right,
close.
right.
And then in their homeowner's insurance, $45 a month.
Mhm,
Okay, if they have a 620 credit score, it's not gonna be $45 a month.
mhm.
So I think here's what the industry is doing. I know you guys are seeing this. Everybody's fighting for the deal. Your
Mhm,
lenders are,
mhm.
everybody is. So you're hearing from more lenders. Lenders are getting more sharky to a degree because they need the business. Everybody needs the business, right? And so why not make it look really good? And then like they're
Better to ask for
they
forgiveness.
call and get
Mhm.
4.9% interest rate. That's better than market rate, right? Well, if they're not reading the fine print,
Mhm.
it's a way for them to get them to ring the phone. Quicken's great at saying, hey, give me $500 up
Yeah.
front as your deposit. So now the buyers feel locked in.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of different things happening in our industry that aren't fair to the buyers because they're making it look really good. It's false advertising. And they're doing it legally with the fine print,
Mhm.
but buyers are unfortunately naive. That's what we're here for, is to teach them. So when someone tells me, hey, I'm getting a way better deal, it's my job to ask for apples to apples and really get to the bottom of it and be that advisor. Again, it's not about the transactions. This is a financial decision. And it's-
Well, we need to be careful that we don't say, oh, that is a better deal, that we say, okay,
Correct.
understand.
Yeah.
That it's common practice to offer you the moon and then,
And unfortunately,
lied,
that you guys
you know, yeah.
are seeing pre-approval letters that probably aren't worth the paper they're on.
Mhm.
And that's why a lot of times you guys get uncomfortable when it's a buyer that comes to you with a pre-approval that you don't recognize.
Mhm.
So that's the difficult part.
I don't know about anybody else, but I tell people up front when they come with a Quicken that it's very competitive, and that's great that Quicken did that. But I would definitely recommend shopping that, because sellers local are going to feel a lot more comfortable taking your offer if they see a local lender. I just tell them that straight up, and I say, you don't have to go with the local lender, but you should at least call one
Sure.
and see, because if it's about the same, your offer is going to look a lot stronger with a Battle Creek lender on a pre-approval than Quicken. And that's an agent to agent.
That's you being a great advisor too to the client, because again, you're teaching them what they need to know.
Well, and I tell them too, my local lender wants my next deal.
Yeah.
That guy from Denver for Quicken doesn't care about me, so I can't reach through the phone and choke them. I can go find Bryon, which I
Correct.
can, right?
Correct.
So at the point where we need the most control is where we're gonna lose all control unless it's a local lender.
And offering that fully underwritten pre-approval, I mean, maybe entice them with that, like, hey, wouldn't you like a solid approval that all you really need is a solidified appraisal and title work?
I'll tell them a horror
Maybe an
story
updated
of
pay
somebody
stub.
who thought they were pre-approved and didn't close. I'm just telling them a horror
Well, a
story
lot of-
because
a
we've
lot
all
of-
got one.
A lot of your lenders aren't even offering a pre-underwrite on pre-approvals. They want a contract before they let an underwriter look at it. And it's partly due to value.
Wow.
So that's a big one. We see the value of giving somewhat of a cash offer
Mhm.
to a degree to your listing agents and sellers.
All right, next one. Pre-approval doesn't say if the buyer needs to sell first. Now, I've already spoken to you directly. You don't do that. But they do. I have 2 this month. 2 of my agents have had offers come in, non-contingent, pre-approval is non-contingent, turns out it's contingent. What can we do? How can we weed that out? What do we do?
So that's a tough one. I've actually lost a deal because I was the one that was putting it on there because it was contingent.
Mhm.
They went with another lender that decided that they felt, and the realtor felt, that they would sell the house before it was necessary.
That's not
And it's
true.
unethical,
It's a lie,
but it's happening.
because you do
and
have to sell the house.
You're absolutely
Yeah.
right.
Yeah,
And they're betting on the fact the house is gonna sell and the transaction is just gonna go absolutely amazing and things are gonna line up.
yeah, and then they ask us, the listing agent, for an extension
Mhm.
to close the other deal.
Correct.
Why would we need an extension?
Because they
It's
needed
not
that the
contingent
cash to
on that.
close, they needed the money,
Yeah.
and it's,
Yeah.
so that's truly question of ethics. I think it's again, part of the desperate measures some people are taking to survive in this business. And not only from a lender perspective, from a real estate agent's perspective, that they're trying to make the deal look more appealing.
I think that's an ethics violation.
It is absolutely, I would agree.
I think a realtor writing a non-contingent offer when they know it's actually contingent, I think it's an ethics
Absolutely.
violation.
Absolutely is.
You've enticed the seller to accept something that's not true.
So as far as how to solve that I've tried to wrap my head around. I mean, short of the listing agent calling the buyer's lender and asking some questions, I don't know if they're going to say.
I did call the buyer's agent's lender and he still didn't tell me
Yeah. See, that's
until the very end.
so that deal that I was talking about, I almost took this person to ethics committee because it was one of those deals where I was that passionate about it. I had email proof that the person was steered away from me and it was a local person. But ultimately I chose that it was probably worse for me to muddy the water with ethics from that perspective of that office. It was not someone that was local to Battle Creek. But I feel like looking backwards, I should have done it because I think there needs to be accountability there.
There does, absolutely. It's a lie.
I mean, these are livelihoods, so yeah.
Explain to us how an appraisal comes back fine, no repairs and at value, and yet the underwriter decides it's not fine. How's that happen?
So we're being proactive about that because we actually experienced it ourselves. And I think appraisers are more and more, I guess, trying to cover their liability to a degree. And they're taking pictures of things and making comments of things that it's as is, but hey, I'm gonna mention there's mold right here, or they're taking pictures of stuff that if it's as is, why are we putting this in here?
Yeah,
So if your
Well,
lender or your
and-
processor misses that, it goes all the way to the underwriter, and then all of a sudden, hey, what's this picture about? We need further inspections.
Mhm.
And so we are now, and I think every lender should get an underwriting on the appraisal as soon as it comes in. Regardless if you have all the fundamentals to send it in, just do a appraisal review only. It's the only way you're gonna avoid it, unless you have someone that's so good on your processing team or the originator is reviewing that. I mean, sometimes these appraisers are hiding comments at the bottom of a page that, unless you're reading it in its entirety, you don't see it. They make comments to deferred maintenance.
yeah.
And if there's deferred maintenance, all those things come up when it gets to an underwriter.
So conventional 20% down, and then you're having lender required repairs. That's unheard of for us, right? There's no such thing as lender required repairs when you're 20% down conventional. what has changed?
So there, I think there's a big misrepresentation of conventional being a lot like cash. Okay, it can be, and it certainly can be, but these appraisers are dictating a lot of that. If it's a safety or health hazard, the underwriter has the discretion to ask for more, even on a conventional loan.
Mhm.
So Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac's rule is that if it's a safety or health hazard that's present, it's something that needs to be dealt with.
Okay.
And so those pictures are becoming a problem. I'm seeing them on a lot of deals. And so it's very important not only for your lender to review those in its entirety up front, because again, originators are not underwriters.
Mhm.
I think myself, I like to know, I'm trying to be on top of all the guidelines at all times, but it's hard to be in an underwriter's head too.
Mhm.
They're very different from a frontline salesperson and an originator. So the importance of having those underwritten up front is very important, and maybe to the point where you just ask your lenders, like, is your appraisal going to be underwritten as soon as it comes in? Because I'm seeing it enough pretty regularly that it needs to happen that way. Because there's nothing more uncomfortable than the agent and the buyer finding out in the ninth inning that, hey, now I got to do this when they were expecting a clear to close.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's very uncomfortable. I think it goes back to knowing what you're going to get from your lender and trusting the process and knowing what each other are going to do. So very good question to ask on any deal you have about that appraisal, because it's going to continue to come up. It's because these appraisers, I think, are just being more and more thorough on covering their liability, and these pictures aren't, to me, if it's as is, it shouldn't pertain.
I'm all about appraisers being more careful too, because appraisers took a huge fall during the crash, and many times,
Correct.
rightly so.
Yeah.
There were some shady appraisals out there.
Yep.
That contributed to the market crash.
Correct.
But, yep, everything's good, no repairs at value, and then the underwriter. So what that tells us is, number one, just because the appraisal's back and the loan officer has told you no repairs, good to value, you don't tell your buyer that, or the seller, because without underwriting approval, we don't know.
Correct.
And number two, I guess if we get access to the appraisal, we should also maybe look for odd comments or.
Again, that's not a bad idea, bad practice, because you could, knowing 15 days before close or knowing 2 days before you're expecting clear to close is
Yeah.
a big difference.
Yes.
That's also why this is another thing I'm implementing it, but we're doing a 10-day prior to close call, like an estimation of, and we're asking questions of, are you still gainfully employed? Are you
Yeah.
going on vacation? Some people,
Did you
some
buy
of
a
your
truck?
buyers, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Some buyers will negotiate a contract date, but then they're out of town for 2 weeks
Yes,
before the
it's
close
true.
date. And so it's important to know all those things well before you get to a clear to close. So to help not create waves in the process.
Would you be willing to share that list with us? Because that list of questions you asked, because obviously what you'd hope is that we'd work with you. But if we have a client that insists with working with their own lender, that's a call we could make.
Correct.
10 days before close.
Yeah.
Have you this, have you that? Is that? accurate?
Absolutely, and that kind of goes to part of the pillars that I'm creating is if you guys know the same things I know that I'm doing,
Mhm.
it helps and we work well together, right? You guys, we both know both sides of the process and how it's gonna go.
Mhm.
And that makes for a better client experience, because like you just said, you could call in advance and solidify that, and that way when the lender calls, it all makes sense to
Yeah, I agree.
you.
Any other how on earth could this happen questions for Bryon?
So the only thing I'll say is there's so much to cover in this hour that set time with me, whether it's 15 minutes on a Zoom, a phone call, a breakfast, a lunch, I don't care what it is.
Mhm.
That's what the partnership needs to be is each agent has different needs. So let's find out what they are. Like I said, be honest with yourself on these things. I'm a humble person, and when I had to ask this question myself, where can I improve? I want to know. And when I talked to my executive coach, I didn't know where it was going to go. I really didn't. I was making the call because I felt I needed to, you can be successful, but there's always something any of us can take from a meeting with somebody else or a partnership that can help you grow. Because that's the idea, is to create the efficiencies to help you guys grow enough, 2% a year. You know, that's what a true partnership's about, is helping each other.
So I would polish that off with saying, you know, we all have our strengths, right? And one of my strengths has always been, I have no problem telling you what I'm doing wrong. And, but I have to be open to feedback as well, right? So, the way I feel like we get good partners is saying, hey, Bryon, I didn't like that.
Mhm.
And if we're gonna work together, I need you to ask that and be willing to say that. But Bryon, you have to be willing to say to us, that does not work for me. If we're gonna work
Absolutely,
together,
I
I
agree.
need you to stop telling your buyers, yeah, because it's not working for me. So, you know, that willingness to give feedback, that willingness to get feedback, it's the way you create that perfect
You're absolutely right.
partnership.
Well, I want to just chime into that based on a conference call her and I did with my coach. She, you know, we had a call. She said, I have a coach. I don't want a coach. It's like, no, you guys can relate. You guys have, you're great leaders. At the end of the call, she called me out and I appreciated that. Maybe she did, because she cares not only about me and the partnership that I bring to you guys, but she cared enough to know, hey, my agents think that you're office coach. You need to get out. You need to get out there and talk to them. And that meant a lot to me. I hope you know that, because she took it upon herself to ask that question. Was it uncomfortable? Yeah, it was uncomfortable for me. My face turns red all the time. But it was, she was looking out for my better interest and you guys wondering what was going on, you know? And so I want to tell you that I would agree that it's important to be honest with each other, whether it's good or bad.